Thank you. So yes, it always says, well, save the best for the last. So the absolute best panel is about to begin. So our panel is on technology, innovation, and convergence. I'd like to call on stage Theodore Asampong, who's the manager for WAPS. He presented to us beautifully earlier. Can we put our hands together for him, please? Steve is already on Zoom. And then we also have Abongili Koki, who's the manager, OTT, Digital Streaming and Solution, SABC. I think he's connected as well. Yes? Yes, he is. Thank you. And then we have Winnie Jijonu, Senior Manager, Digital Platforms, MTN. She'll be joining us as well. Can you put your hands together for her as she comes to our stage here? So I was shocked to find out when Theodore made a presentation. Did you guys already know this? Okay, so first of all, how many of you in the room have broadband at home? Not mobile data, broadband. Wow, okay, interesting. I was shocked when the stats, 10% of homes in Ghana have broadband. How shocking. So we're probably going to stress Winnie, since she's from MTN, and ask her why. Is it the cost? Is it too expensive? What is she going to do about it? But yes, I'm going to start with Winnie, only because, I'm biased. She's, a fellow lady, so why not? And we haven't heard her voice yet. So Winnie, my question, with 5G scaling across Africa and 6G pilots emerging globally, how will connectivity reshape content delivery, and what will it take to make these advances affordable and inclusive?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Can you hear her?
Yeah. Oh, awesome. All right, so thank you for giving me the first question. So when we're talking about 5G, firstly, we'll always talk about speed, right? We're also talking about interactivity. So when you're now using these technologies, you'll be able to, yeah, I'm hearing it now. Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay. So you're going to be able to think about like live sports, looking from different camera views. So everything is not going to be as static as it is today, but being able to actually be experiencing everything a bit differently, almost like you're within the stadium. So, and we spoke earlier, so many people have spoken earlier about public-private partnerships. This is how it's going to actually become more affordable and more widespread. I don't remember who it was who spoke about it in the beginning, about government providing infrastructure and then private sector being able to thrive on it. But this is definitely something that we believe will enhance accessibility and customers being able, at all levels, being able to have these new experiences.
Thank you so much. Earlier I mentioned that Abongoli Koki, Manager OTT Digital Streaming and Solution SABC, was joining us, and I'm sure you can see him. So hello, can you hear us?
Yes, ma'am. I can hear you.
Fantastic, fantastic. So I'm going to go right into it so they can hear your voice as well. So audiences are consuming across TV, mobile, and social media live streams. What does, in your opinion, what does a truly sustainable hybrid broadcasting model look like in 2025 and beyond?
That's an interesting question. I think it's one of the questions that we continuously, on our side at the SABC, we discussed, because the hybrid model needs to be the one that drives the audiences to your platform, right? Most of the time, the social media tends to be where the audience is for short form content, but then the true DNA for traditional broadcasters needs to still remain with the long form. So we usually say that put your teasers on the social media platforms, put your teasers on your platforms that are not originally yours and that you can't manage fully, and then redirect your audience to the best of your ability to your audience. For instance, we've got SABC Plus that we launched a few years back. That SABC Plus platform is available globally, but we've realized that our audience is still loyal to your YouTubes, etc. So we're trying to redirect that audience, especially with exclusive content, exclusive strategies that speaks to our audience, knowing very well what they like and what drives our numbers back to our own native platforms to keep them, and ensuring that traffic and revenue is upscaled to our benefit and not necessarily to third-party platforms. So it is a tricky one.
Thank you so much. So we're going to go through different subject areas. So Winnie just touched on, we did a bit of AI. Abongali has just done something to do with our streaming. And I want to go to Theodore and mention, because I think he touched on it briefly, how we transition from analog to digital. Most countries are nearing full digital migration, yet rural coverage and adoption challenges remain. How do we ensure no community is left behind?
All right, thank you very much. Well, I mean, for Ghana, I think the minister touched on it. We are fully digital, actually, but the analog is yet to switch off, so that's fine. However, there are many countries who are gradually and slowly switching over. And for these countries, and I have to say this, satellite has helped them to ensure that the rural areas continue to receive their content, because as you saw, those rural areas don't have the data or the broadband anyway. So satellite is being helpful, and you saw the graphs. This is also why satellite penetration is being pushed higher than the rest. So yes, to reach the rural areas, usually satellite has been the easiest way. And if you look at the data from Ghana, when we do our satellite monitor exercise, we find that urban areas are more on the DTT and OTT, and the rural parts of Ghana consume more of the satellite, which is what you expect. Yeah. So they're not being left out.
Thank you. Steve, I'm coming to you. I know you mentioned truth, you mentioned the audience, you mentioned aligning and innovation. My question to you, Steve, is AI is now shaping everything from automated news anchors to personalized content feeds. How can broadcasters embrace these efficiencies while protecting trust and credibility?
Yeah, well, I'll start with the end of your question, if I may, because that's the most important part. We are the most trusted organizations in the media, and in a world where digital platforms are full of hatred and disinformation, we need to preserve that. Every organization will have a different approach to it. At the BBC, our AI policy has a number of guardrails embedded within it. One is that there is always a human oversight over anything that an AI algorithm has generated. So, for example, we've just launched a new service, BBC Polska, in Polish language in Eastern Europe. It's launched extremely quickly and incredibly efficiently. And a lot of the content on that service has derived from journalism that's been produced by BBC reporters in other languages. We've employed AI to help with the translation, but then a Polish-speaking BBC journalist looks over all of that, checks, corrects, and ensures that it meets the BBC's editorial standards before that goes anywhere near the audience. So it's being used within the BBC for operational efficiency, but in such a way that it doesn't compromise the trust that the BBC that the audiences place in the BBC. So that's the way we're doing it at the BBC. And I would just say to everybody who works in traditional media with a big brand, whether it's a public broadcaster or a market-leading commercial broadcaster, don't put the trust that the audience places in your brand at risk by making simple mistakes through AI.
So Steve, thank you for that. And I think you actually answered my follow-up question about, and it was going to be about why safeguards or what safeguards are needed to prevent AI-generated misinformation. I think you answered that by citing the example of your Polish journalist. Thank you for that. Looking
Pleasure.
over to make sure that it's accurate. Winnie, we're coming back to 5G because it's critical, but not exactly, not exactly 5G, but around 5G. So beyond speed, how can 5G and edge computing transform the way audiences interact with live broadcasting?
So yeah, thank you for that. So as we spoke about earlier, if you can imagine yourself you ever watch a game show?
Yes.
When now you need to vote or you need to kind of ask a question or answer a question. Now, when you're talking about edge computing, what that means is that it doesn't have to do the full journey of going all the way back to the original servers to come all the way back to you in Ghana. So this is actually having these intermediary devices that they can come back to you with more speed. So it allows us to have a more interactive engagement when you're interacting with content online or digitally. So that's how we see it, supporting the ecosystem where people can be more engaged and have more of a real-time exposure and experience with content.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Abongali, I feel like I have two questions for you. I know you spoke earlier about redirecting traffic to sites that people like, but two things. How can local broadcasters stay competitive with global platforms while delivering content that reflects local culture and values? I know you described, getting the traffic, but how do you do that? How do you make sure that it reflects your local content, local culture and values?
That's a good one. So basically, Steve touched on it in his earlier presentation that content is key, and especially when you're personalizing it to the region or the area that you are based in. So you can have the best technology behind broadcast. You can have the best outlook, public viewing. But if your content is not speaking to your audience, you are going to lose a lot of your loyal people that consume your platform. So the best is strike a balance for traditional broadcasters especially. Strike a balance, be competitive, see what small streaming platforms are doing, bring those strategies into your model, but also keep a distinct fine line between traditional broadcasting and digital streaming, because as much as they are separate, but there are overlaps. And know your audience where they are placed at, because that will tell you or give you a heads up to say where should you focus your content on. The nice thing about digital or online streaming is that it provides broadcasters with detailed analytics that helps the strategy behind content to be able to push a niche market based on what the audience is consuming. So there are lots of benefits with your technology that you put in, especially from an analytical perspective. You can have a certain bouquet or catalog of content for Ghana and a totally different catalog for South Africa within the same platform. So know your audience, use the technology to push your strategies when it comes to content.
Thank you. And since you mentioned Steve, I'm going to go to Steve before I come back to Theodore. Steve, so looking at models from Europe, Asia, the US, and what you do at BBC, which innovations in broadcasting offer the best lessons for Africa, and where can Africa leapfrog with its own solutions?
Yeah, look, I feel a bit uncomfortable with any suggestion that the way that we do it in the UK is the right way to do it in an African country. I think every country needs to look at its local context. And Abongile's platform, SABC Plus, is a really good example of that. Because what the SABC has done is create one platform which has streaming audio and on demand, streaming video, TV channels and on demand. At the BBC, we don't have that. We started this journey much earlier. We started with a radio app and a separate television app. The TV app is known as BBC iPlayer. It's the #1 video platform in the UK. It beats Netflix, it beats all of them. In fact, there are more hours of BBC content than all the streamers put together. It's that big. But if we did it today, we would probably have had one app with television and radio all in one place, as the SABC has done. But we didn't. So the way we do it is not necessarily the right template for for everybody. But one thing I do know works very strongly, and this is a great advantage to you if you run a TV channel or you've got radio networks, is that we can use our broadcast platforms to promote our digital platforms in a way that none of our competitors do. And remember, don't give up on broadcast anytime soon. In the UK, which is a very competitive, highly digitized market, the number of people listening to broadcast radio every week is still 87%. 87% of the UK population listens to traditional linear radio every week. That's massive. And on an FM dial, you can get, I know the NCA likes to squeeze in lots of stations, you can not get more than 48, 50 stations on the FM dial. If you are a player in a competitive set of 50, that is a highly prized place to be. On digital, you're in a competitive set of infinity. So look after your broadcast platforms. They are highly valuable and they're a great place from which to build your digital profile. Radio in Africa is the #1 driver of digital traffic.
Thank you so much, Steve. Theodore, back to you. I know we mentioned this earlier, but in your opinion, what policies, and based on the work that you've done at WAPS and other places, what policies or collaborations do you think are still needed to maximize the benefits of digital migration for both broadcasters and audiences?
Wow, okay, that's a loaded one. Probably a question for the panel before us. Look, when we had the coffee break, we actually touched on this, and I approached George and I said, look, I believe that eventually a converged regulatory environment will work for us. Why? Because we need one that looks after technology, behavioral, and also digital, online, because we can see that the shift is coming. Media is moving online, and whether we like it or not, we have to have policy to direct that. Broadcasters here are wondering, why is it that somebody can sit online and do something or say something and they get away with it, whilst if they did something, the regulatory body will jump onto them immediately. And those guys online are making all the money because they can say or do whatever they want with no boundaries. And the guys who are doing traditional work and the ones who are spending a lot of money are not making the money. So that we need a policy that will ensure that the digital guys are brought or into line with the traditional, or maybe allow the traditional to do as the digital are doing. But that's not for me to say.
Thank you. So this goes to both Abongali and to Winnie. So this is a question. Can partnerships between telecoms, broadcasters, and digital platforms create sustainable ecosystems, or will competition always dominate? Winnie?
So that's an amazing question, and it's something we're working on today in MTN. So one of the projects we're working on is called MTN TV, which it allows, as a telecommunications company, and also partnering with Mobile Money Limited, which allows for payments. So there was a lot of conversation this morning about payments. How do we broadcasters get paid for content? So partnering with the different broadcasting stations for free-to-air, fast channels, VOD, being available in one solution where you can also then in the future access your different OTT options. So this is something that as a business we are looking at, and how that partnership can work so that Ghanaians as a whole can have access to pay using mobile money, which is the easier way for them to access content of all types, including local content.
Thank you. Abongali, same question. Should I repeat it or?
Repeat it.
Repeat the question. Okay. So the question was, can partnership between telecoms, broadcasters, and digital platforms create sustainable ecosystems, or will competition always dominate?
So it's a good one. Mm-hmm. So competition will always be there. We can't write it off because competition keeps every business moving forward and being innovative. But partnerships are required within the space, especially in the African market. Broadcasters, online platforms need telcos and ISPs in order to keep providing broadcast or online content. One, infrastructure in Africa is still not at the same level as your tier 1 countries. That's number one. Data, which was highlighted in the previous conversation, is still something that needs to be balanced across sectors. Now, for a country like Ghana or South Africa, you need to reach all corners as a public broadcaster, all corners of your country, so that you do not create a digital divide within your audience. Now, that is a very, very key aspect when you want, as a public broadcaster, to reach all your traditional audience and still be as effective as you were in the traditional space. Now, we do understand that not everyone has access to online devices, but that's something where then your government or your ministries, we start having the conversation of convergence and how do we meet each other halfway between telcos, between broadcasters, between the device manufacturers, in order to carry all the people that need to be, or create accessibility to online content, online consumption, and everything that falls in between. So from a device perspective, from a telco or ISP perspective, from the policies and regulations perspective, and your traditional broadcast, especially public broadcasters, there needs to be a singular conversation or uniform conversation to drive that convergence as a public mandate or public delivery to everyone.
Thank you. And before we wrap up with your one sentence, I saw Steve perk up when I asked that question. Steve, did you want to add to that?
I'm a partnerships manager. I believe in partnerships, and I think partnerships between media houses and telecom operators are vital. We've worked with MTN for many years in multiple territories. It's great that MTN is launching a new video platform. I would love to help serve BBC audiences with BBC content on that platform in Ghana. And we've worked with telecom organizations around African territories which have zero-rated the data for BBC Public Service Radio, for example. That's a great way to help public service organizations get content out to audiences at scale and to drive up the number of subscribers who decide to choose that particular mobile phone network as their platform of choice. So yeah, partnerships, mutually beneficial partnerships that work for media organizations, for the telecom MNOs, and for audiences. They're vital and they're really enjoyable when they work well.
Thank you. So to wrap up, Theodore, and this is for all of you actually, in one sentence, what is the most urgent opportunity or challenge Africa's broadcasting sector must focus on over the next 5 years? Should I repeat the question?
No, it's okay.
Okay.
So, to focus on the next 5 years, I believe local content is key. I mean, we have to do a better job in creating more local content. And of course, once we have the local content, we have to look at the hybrid model where this content can be made available over satellite and DTT as well as online so that everybody can have access to that content. I mean, this is why at WAPS and KNET, we are championing the DTT conversation, and we are soon to open up an OTT platform so that our partners who work with us can be put on the satellite as well as have be on online as well. And then, of course, finally, because of that, we have to solve the data problem. What is the data problem? It needs to be more accessible and it needs to be more affordable. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Winnie?
Yeah, I'd like to echo that content answer, just from a different perspective. So yes, being able to generate more local content, but also allowing monetization of that content. for the different people who are creating it. So that, I think, is where we should focus. Earlier we spoke about Africa and not just Ghana. How can we learn about ourselves? I think was the words that were said. And that is through content. And being able to see something that's happening in Tanzania, something that's happening in Kenya, and understanding that culture, but also being able to pay for it so that we can help those content creators create more, and so we can become more united. Yeah.
Thank you, Winnie. Abongile?
Look beyond your borders. Don't underestimate the power of digital and online presence. Ensure that the strategy speaks to revenue and monetization so that your platforms and your business is sustainable for a long term. And ensure that for each market that you are looking to target, you understand their particular interests, their consumption patterns, and also what is not viable, because it's not a one size shoe fits all. Every market is different. So when you're jotting down your strategies, ensure that you tick all those pillars and everything else will just come into place. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Steve?
Thanks, Hilary. I would say drive for relevance audience. Make sure your audience can recognize themselves being reflected on air and on screen. And yes, platforms will come and go very quickly. Go to all the places that your audience is, but then bring them back into your safe space where they're protected from disinformation and hatred, and where you can build the trust that you need between your brand and your audience.
Thank you so much. And there we have it, the Technology, Innovation, and Convergence panel. I believe that my panelists did a great job speaking about AI and automation and broadcasting, speaking about 5G and high-speed internet's impact, content delivery platforms, and hybrid broadcasting models, as well as case studies from leading global markets, transitioning from analog to digital, funding and sustainability models. Can we put our hands together for Theodore, Steve, Abongile, and Winnie? Thank you so much. And I thought their presentations were brilliant as well. So can you put your hands together one more time? You know, you have my full permission to find them, to Google them, to stalk them, and maybe they would share their presentation as well. But thank you so much, panelists. You are awesome. Awesome. I think we've run out of time, so Vivian is already here. We were trying to allow for questions, but I think she said we're done. So do we have the time for maybe one or two? You know what, just two, not statements, questions. So if you have a question, please show by hand and we'll have you ask your question. Do we have any questions? I feel like they did such a brilliant job. Do we have any questions? Yes, sir. Let's get a...
Hi, Phil. This is a question for you. KNET and WAPS, yeah? What stops you from becoming or evolving into the GEO, the Ambani Group's GEO for Africa, right? What stops you from embracing the concept of content? You spoke and you said nobody's spoken about content, but because content is expensive to produce, yeah? So you've got the technology, we've got GBC, and we've got a lot of content producers who don't have money. What stops you from galvanizing the marketplace, yeah? And looking out there, where the market is actually properly developed is Brazil. When you look at the diaspora markets, yeah, where technology can reach outside of Africa, where the market is developed, where it can make money, right? It's not being tapped. Why?
Thank you, George. An interesting question. If I understand it right, you're asking why don't we go into content? Is that the first one? Yeah, 360. Look, we're a technology company. Our customers trust us to take their content that they've created, that they've spent a lot of money on, to be delivered to their audiences. I think for us, it will be very unfair or probably unethical to now compete with them on content as well. We have to focus on delivering their content to their audiences in the best quality form and in the most affordable way as possible. I mean, of course we could do content, but I think that would be a very dangerous thing for us to do. We are competing with our partners, and we have over 120 TV stations that rely on us to distribute their content. So that would be, it's an interesting one. What we can do, however, perhaps, is find a way to help them monetize their content better. I mean, the advertising market in this country, as the Honorable Minister said, does not, it's not well developed, or there's not a lot of money into it. And the reason for me is because we don't have a audience measurement data that we can trust, or for these advertisers to trust and to put money to it. Is that an area where we can come in? Can we help with providing this data? Maybe. And this is why we're looking at an OTT platform, because then we can use the digital, the online presence to develop audience analytics much faster and probably even cheaper. Can we help build a maybe advertising marketplace? Some countries have it, where you have this data, advertisers will come and then they will buy slots on the most popular programs. These are things that potentially we could do, and we are looking into it, to stimulate and grow the market. But, we might not be doing content. Have I answered your question? Thank you.
Hello? Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. The reason why I say this is that the market is malnourished, right? So the content producers you service, most of them are mediocre. It's a fact, right? The Steve Martin's presentation alluded to a lot of talk shows, number one. Number two, the reality about the content that needs to be produced versus the content that's being produced. You and I know that the content being produced stays in Ghana, right? It doesn't travel. So you can't create a market. And the reality too is that what you do, right, you need to break into other markets. So if you could be making twice or 3 times or 10 times the ratio of investment, versus profits you're making, with DTT and OTT, they supplement apps. The whole process has changed, and you're well positioned to drive a new ecosystem. You really are. It's not about competing with mediocrity. It's about generating excellence into the future. So I think you've got to look at that, because your presentation is impressive, but it's very SES. It cuts itself, it stops itself there, like we provide technology. But the African market needs a bold technology driver who can amortize the value that's not being created in the free-to-air space. The other point is, when it comes to advertising, there's a reason why fundamentally the market is poor. It's a discounted market. The only 2 markets that are relevant to most global advertisers, South Africa and Egypt. Everyone else, they say the excuse is Nielsen's, but now you've got algorithms. So I'll come back to the Ambani brothers, the geo model. They started with Reliance, right? And they moved into technology, and they had the same setup you have now. And the markets that are mature, the diaspora markets, Britain, the US, the Caribbean, South America, that's where you can plug in and make money and bring Africa along. Centec can't do what you do. So when you look around the market, there's no one else doing what you do, not even in Nigeria.
Well, thanks for that compliment. But I mean, going back to the content, I wouldn't say our broadcasters are producing mediocre content. I think we have to applaud them for what they do with the resources they have, because a lot of them are producing content that have audiences locally. So the local audiences enjoy that content. Perhaps if we are able to send them out they will be able to get global audiences as well. And that's something we can focus on, looking at how we can take our partner broadcasters' content locally and globally. So that's what we're going to try and look at with the Jew Armani staff. The conversations being had. I won't go into that now, but you and I will have a conversation later. Thank you very much.
So just wanted to add, I spoke about MTN TV earlier, but one of the things we are doing is local content. We're gonna have content around animation. There is I think it's a cooking show. Yao can actually speak more towards this. So yeah, so some of the things we are looking at is driving content, and our platform does allow us to have the in-depth data as to users and audience. So advertising will be easier. So as MTN is a platform, and that's how we see ourselves, not to compete, but as a platform for the industry to be a part of. We want to provide this data, the analytics, and also for you to support you in monetizing your content. But at the same time, we're looking at how do we help the industry to build local content, quality content. So that's something that we're definitely working on today.
Thank you so much. Can we put our hands together for our spirited panelists? It was lovely. Thank you so much. We're so grateful. Thank you, Theodore. Thank you, Winnie. Thank you, Steve. And thank you, Abongele. Thank you.